Hi, I'm Zapchon. Today, instead of making cartoons, I'm going to contribute to the hideous bloated mass that is the big microphone guy genre, by demonstrating my heisting-based pseudo-intellectualism. To start us off, we have the Payday company's first game, Payday the Heist, a game where you steal shit as the poster boys of the Payday gang, though out of the four, the only correct choice is Hoxton. An important thing to know about Payday the Heist is that it is completely eclipsed by its successor. Payday 2 has all of its heists, weapons, even its incredible soundtrack available alongside Payday 2's own incredible soundtrack. This means that in 2025, the gritty 2000s aesthetic is all the Heist really has going for it, but even then there's mods available for 2 to make it feel the same. As a result of all of this, you may be wondering what the point of me talking about Payday the Heist is. Payday 2 released in 2013, and to say that it was lightning in a bottle is putting it lightly. This game practically saved its developers overkill. More than once. That's not even mentioning the heartbreakingly loyal Payday community, the humor of which could be studied. For a lot of the Payday community nowadays, it really is a tale of you had to be there. Back in my day, a guy called General McBadass was top dog of the YouTube Payday scene. His videos weren't crazy high effort or anything, but they were consistent and concise, with him also being pretty damn good at the game. The same can be said for others I watched that were in a similar vein. Some of them are doing different things now, and I'm sure the internet respected their choice to stop playing the game, as it always does. There was an interesting sort of parasocial camaraderie between the Payday YouTubers and the average players. Said players themselves were a 50-50 of being the coolest teammates you'll know for the hour you're doing heists, or the angry guy with broken English who kicks you just before the heist starts or just before it ends. Today, that sense of all being one big community is still sort of there, but undeniably lacking the same magic. As for the game itself, it's still just as fun as it was when I first started playing it in 2015. For better or for worse. Payday is often criticized for its ludicrous amounts of DLC, but speaking as a slut who bought every single one, I don't think the amount paid is disproportionate to the amount you're getting. There is a ton of heists added later by DLC, far surpassing the initially planned amount in the base game. There's also over 5 times as many characters to pick from, with the only correct choice being Hoxton. I play this game a lot, and as such, I don't regret my purchases, though I only recommend picking up the DLC if you both really like the base game and really desire more out of it. Payday 2's gameplay is, by the nature of its concept, extremely repetitive, though for a lot of people, myself included, it's such a fun repetition that it doesn't really matter. We will experience monotony and we will like it. The level up system in this game adds an extra layer to things as well, so that you feel like there's an actual point to heists and that you're progressing with each one. Even if it is entirely artificial number go up satisfaction, it clearly works since I've plugged over 1,000 hours into this game. That's approximately 105% of a Liz Truss term. There's certainly enough weapons to keep you engaged, with each one having a ton of attachments and cosmetics, further aided by some of the slickest reloads I've seen in my fucking life. Melee weapons are also plentiful, though I quickly realized you only ever need 2 of them. The electric fists for stunning and the katana for damage. Masks also have a big customization role, and let me tell you, there's no shortage of bases to pick from. There's also things that barely conceal your face, if at all, such as tiaras and sunglasses and, well, a lot of stuff. I can only imagine the looks of horror on the cops' faces as I roll up in my Doge mask with my trusty throwing spears. Speaking of the cops, besides the usual hordes of normal, stronger, or stronger-er cops, there's a handful of special units you'll need to look out for as well. The shield shields, the sniper snipes, the taser tases you, the medic gives meds, and the cloaker clocks you. There's also the marshal, who is the shield or sniper, but less fun to fight. And of course, the bulldozer. This eccentric rotund fellow's gimmick is that he's a tank. He does look intimidating, until you realize you just have to shoot his faceplate off to take him down. Overkill must have had this same train of thought, as they started letting him run at full speed and gave him miniguns, healing powers, and one-shot shotguns. Finally, there's Captain Winters, a mini-boss of sorts who shows up once per heist to prolong the current police assault until you break through enough of his shield minions. But Winters, like most things in life, is quickly sorted with some grenades. All of this together can make for some pretty hectic battles, so much so that you forget the core gameplay loop is waiting for timers to finish. Unlike its predecessor, Payday 2 also has a functioning stealth mode. Sneaking your heists can be some good fun, with some even being stealth only. Though be warned, you will grow to hate the game's NPCs. and probably your teammates too. Cameras will also go from being neat set dressing to the bane of your existence. On most maps, you can disable the cameras if you kill their operator, but don't think this'll save you if you got spotted, because the guy is such a professional hater that he still sounds the alarm from beyond the grave. The camera operator also counts towards 4 guard kills you're allowed in stealth, with the alarm going off once you answer a 5th pager. And as a quick side note, some of the pager responses from the heisters are easily a highlight of the game for me.
動作確認だ。特に報告なし。死体もなしだ。
Skills also play a role in Payday 2, a topic which I will not be delving too deep into, otherwise we'll be here until video essay length. Just know that there's a lot of illusions of free choice when it comes to higher difficulties, and that it becomes more about giving yourself enough leeway to cheese it to the end of the heist before your downs run out, of which you only have 1 on the highest difficulty. My personally preferred build is one I call the Gun Schizo. Made for Mayhem difficulty or lower, Gun Schizo allocates points into weapon buffs across the board, allowing a lot of variety. Choosing the Grinder perk deck along with it allows me to regenerate health whenever I shoot a cop, meaning I can run around a heist like a madman with any weapon as I please. The heists themselves have you trotting across the states, and at points even the world. You'll visit DC, Texas, Russia, Mexico, even an oil rig, and much more. And among the things you steal are cash, gold, guns, drugs, paintings, tiaras, cars, VR headsets, and the zombie virus from Left 4 Dead, just to name a few. And as mentioned earlier, you can also replay the iconic heist from the first game's story, all of which, barring no mercy, are not flashbacks in lore and are actually happening a second time. Meaning that on Heat Street, in lore, you just so happen to be chasing the same guy who betrays you in the same way down the same street, heating up his identical getaway van after an identical unexpected crash, then escorting him up the same hill to an identical conveniently available helicopter. Which brings another bullet point. Payday 2 has a story that John Wick, Team Fortress 2, Hotline Miami, Goat Simulator, and the H3 podcast are all a part of. The finale of the Payday 2 story follows the gang to their grimiest locale yet, the White House. But there's even more to it than that. Within the White House map exists a Call of Duty Zombies-esque secret quest to achieve a true ending, but this also requires some setup. First, you have to beat the following heists. Then, upon completing them, you return to your heister pad and assemble an artifact before playing piano. You then get a list of 20 random achievements plucked from the list of over 1,000 achievements this game has, the names of which you have to decode from an ancient language. I was unfortunate enough to roll the Overdrill achievement, which meant me and the boys had to complete the secret vault on First World Bank that has a drill time of 30 real-world minutes. With that done, we can finally go back to the White House. Upon removing a glowing painting downstairs, we descend into Elon's secret emerald mine, and are faced with the door to the true ending. Using a cheat sheet, I decrypted the door code while the boys fought off the prehistoric alien cloakers. The door opened, and I shot Giancarlo Esposito before he could kill our boss Bane, who is at that point wheelchair-bound with the zombie virus from Left 4 Dead. With Gus dead, we inserted the Mayan gold into the corresponding slots, allowing us to transfer Bane's soul into the body of the US president. If you think that all sounded mental, you should see the originally planned ending heist. One last thing I'd like to go over is Payday 2's modding scene. A grand majority of the mods made for Payday 2 are funny sound replacements or anime girl textures. But alongside the Weeb Wave are many preference and quality of life mods that can sometimes make the game downright better to play. There's seemingly been a surge in custom heists in recent years too, but I haven't tried these myself, so I'll leave it at that. Some of my personal favourite mods are listed in the description. I recommend giving all of them a look if you play the game a lot. With all that said, I think overall, for a co-op shooter made on a 2001 racing game engine, the Overkill guys did a very serviceable job. But that isn't where the story ends.
I've got some thoughts, but you're not going to like them.
Payday 3 was announced to some pretty decent hype. Although there were some complaints about the more plastic-looking parts of the art direction, the game looked like a decent step up from the previous one's foundation. A lot of it can be attributed to the game now running on the Unreal Engine, rather than Overkill Starbreeze using that same racing game engine. A beta was briefly made available too, prompting further hype and praise of what there was so far. The game then finally launched, and to say people were unhappy with Payday 3 is to call a hurricane turbulence. Though before I tear into Payday 3 like everybody else, it's important to know that in its current state, it's not terrible. The graphics, while again lacking in some areas, are still a dramatic step up from 2. The soundtrack also ranges from pretty okay to pretty great despite being made by a different composer, and skills make a fun, albeit kinda jumbled return. As for characters, there's already 7 of them available, with the only correct choice being Who the fuck is that? Some old heists were remastered for free. Hostages serve more of a purpose now and can be moved easier. The special units, of course, make a return, with 2 new ones, the Techie, who pilots drones until she's killed, and the Nader. Can you guess what he does? The guns also still feel pretty good to shoot, except for most of the secondaries, but we'll look past that for now. Crossplay was added, greatly extending the game's lifespan, and there's a brand new overkill weapon mechanic. It basically functions as your ultimate ability. You press the key and a much stronger weapon is acquired with a smaller ammo count. I actually really like this system, as it gives things like miniguns more usage beyond meme builds and just giving them a try. Honestly, as I was recording this footage, I had a lot more fun than I thought I would. Okay, Zapchon, well if it's so great, then why do people hate it? Well, it has to be said that the game's launch was nothing short of a catastrophe, even by 2023 game standards. Nobody was able to even get into the game due to the shitty always online function going down immediately. The lucky ones who managed to get in were then met with a pretty much endless queuing time, as the game's matchmaking was on contracted servers. The even fewer who managed to get into a lobby were then met with a myriad of errors, likely before losing connection as well. When the servers were finally sort of fixed, loads of people had refunded the game, and the ones sticking around were jaded. Any hype train that there might have been had just crashed. I still remember trying the game as it launched too. Once the always online login screen actually let me play the game, I came to the horrifying realization that the heist I had played in the beta was actually the best heist in the game. Except for maybe Golden Shark, the only other bank heist at the time of writing. The other heists are still good, but they seem to be lacking the same charm the previous 2 games had. But that isn't too surprising considering the dev team is a ship of Theseus sort of situation. It can feel like they're trying to begrudgingly check boxes to be called a Payday heist rather than actually wanting to be one. For example, the randomization elements that kept 2's heists fresh now feel more like a tiny obligation going on in the background. There also didn't seem to be as much wow factor to any of the heists, not helped by the noticeably smaller groups of enemies. The stealth, while in some areas is a definitive improvement over 2, still tends to fall flat on its face with these fucking watchdog circles they spam all over the place. If you decide to go loud, you'll notice pretty quickly that the cops seem to take way more hits now as well. This is both due to Starbreeze deciding to make cop health consistent across all difficulties, and melee as a system being reduced to a stunning mechanic only. No matter what you bash a cop with, you will only knock them back, no damage dealt. Though the recently returning Jacket character pack did introduce a baseball bat that does damage, a concept so dangerous in the Payday 3 world that it's an ultimate ability. I respect Starbreeze for wanting to experiment with this, and a fair amount of the time it does work, but other times a heist can feel somewhat empty without the more horde-like police assaults, and weapons naturally feel weaker because of the health changes. Heists like No Rest for the Wicked don't suffer from this as much since the map is smaller, but for any with more open areas it begins to feel like waiting for your friend to spawn in Metropolis on Gary's mod. At launch there was a severe content drought as well, as 3 launched with objectively less than 2 did at launch despite having more development time and support. Though this was later alleviated a bit with Operation Medic Bag, which was Starbreeze's attempt to bring all hands on deck for Payday 3, and hopefully bring it to a more appreciated state. They did release some decent heists. I dare say Boys in Blue is pretty damn good. It all gave the game a much more acceptable amount of content. Had the game released like this, it probably would have gone over much better. Well, ignoring the always online thing. A while later, and Starbreeze seemed to think so as well, contracting amnesia and forgetting why they got backlash in the first place. They started to move away from Operation Medic Bag and declared that they had
continued to deliver when it comes to Payday 3.
As an avid fan of the Unready button update, I'm inclined to agree. Finally, there's Payday 3's story. It's a lot more structured than the haphazardly thrown together story in 2, but unfortunately it only sucks a little less than 2's story, and only really serves as a way to tie the heists together. I think half the budget went into getting Ice-T. If you didn't buy the DLC, the story also ends pretty abruptly, not having a satisfying conclusion. But don't worry, the Payday 3 Gold Edition exists so you can get all of it. Except for Jacket, fuck you, buy him separate. In conclusion, Payday 3 is not an abysmal experience, and there is good fun to be had, especially with friends. But in its current state, it's the kind of game you pick up on a sale, play all the heists, maybe replay some for a good few hours, and then probably don't touch it again for a while. There's not necessarily something wrong with that, but it does mean that 3 is living in the shadow of its cooler older brother. Payday 2, when compared to 3, is a fraction of the price, easier to run, has more content, a stronger community despite the lack of crossplay, and might even outlive its successor due to 3's over-reliance on online infrastructure. All of this makes it hard to get a case together for 3, not helped by the overwhelming negativity surrounding the game, the reasons for which I've only covered some of. I don't mean to give the impression that I blame the developers for this though. Despite some negative directorial choices coming from the devs, some digging reveals that almost all the most damaging ones come from higher up the chain, people who likely have major tunnel vision and see Payday as their golden goose. As for me, I anxiously await the Payday 3 PUBG crossover. Is this a VR player?
It could be.
I don't know, wait, no, I think this is a VR player because of how his arms are moving.